Hey guys, welcome back this morning. I hope you had a really great weekend. We're about to start a brand new week, so let's check out last week before we set up for today's trading ranges. Alright, so this is SPY and we are on the 30-minute time frame, and last week we opened right here with a gap up. And we took it right to the 30-minute 200 moving average. And take a look at the angle of that moving average. It was straight down, and right when we gapped up, we saw resistance there and got pushed back down. So Monday, we gapped up. We ended up filling this down gap right here, or at least starting up at the top of it, hitting resistance at that 30-minute 200 moving average. Then we came back down, filled the bear gap, filled the bull gap, and then from there we pulled it back up and took it back up to the 30-minute 200 moving average. Then we were met with that downward resistance again. This is going into Tuesday. We saw that as resistance and pulled back down. Wednesday last week we opened with a gap down, so we gapped away from this downward momentum back underneath the 35 EMA. Last Wednesday was the day that Jerome Powell spoke, and we did see that bounce up before he spoke, and then we dropped towards the end of the day. So earlier in the week, up to the 30-minute 200 moving average, gap down before Powell spoke, and then that 35 EMA was reclaimed as resistance. So Wednesday, pop up to that 35 EMA and drop, and then Thursday, which was the last day of the week, since Friday was Good Friday, we opened with a small gap up, then we came back up to that 35 EMA and saw that as resistance. So last week, we did trade completely following that downward momentum. So SPX, same thing over here. We did open on Monday with a gap up to the downward facing 30-minute 200 moving average. As soon as we filled this down gap, on the upper side here, we came back down and filled it right here. We did have an up gap right here, filled that. And as soon as that filled, we came back up to the 30-minute 200 moving average. Tuesday, we continued that downward momentum into Wednesday where we gapped down. This is the day where Jerome Powell spoke. And before he spoke, the entire market gapped down. We had United Healthcare set the tone, and the markets gapped down. So we gapped away from that downward facing 30-minute 200 moving average and saw the 35 EMA as resistance again. So Jerome Powell spoke right here, dropped the market. And then Thursday, last day of the trading week, we came back up to the 35 EMA, saw that as resistance. So here, both in SPY and SPX, 30-minute 200 moving average with the 35 EMA trading underneath it, that is bearish. 35 EMA got rejected at the 30-minute 200 moving average, and we stayed bearish from open to close last week. We just kept trading along that downward momentum. SPY closed up on Friday, 0.14%, SPX up 0.13%, and on Thursday, I think I just said Friday, but on Thursday of last week, we did trade completely within the implied move. All right, and moving on to QQQ. We did open last week right here. So we opened with a gap up. We were met with that downward facing momentum right here. That's on the 30-minute 200 moving average. We filled this bear gap right here at the top, then came back, filled it all the way. And then we came back up to the 30-minute 200 moving average. Again, met with that downward momentum here. You could see we had the red signal line even before this 35 EMA got rejected right here. Wednesday, we gapped down. 35 EMA was reclaimed as resistance. Jerome Powell spoke right here, brought the market a little bit lower. And on Thursday, we traded completely underneath the 35 EMA. And QQQ actually closed flat on Thursday, down 0.02%. And VXN closed down 2.55%. And we did stay completely within the implied move. Look at the setup we went into Friday with. We were underneath the 35 EMA, underneath the 30-minute 200 moving average with a bear gap right above the top of the implied move. And we did not even get above that first resistance level. So from the beginning of the week right here to the end of the week right here, we followed that bearish momentum through the entire week. IWM, we did open last week with a gap up right into this down gap, and we got into it a little bit. This was the gap where Trump tweeted right here, and we had that massive move the week before. Then we gapped down, and IWM gapped into that on Monday and then got into it a little bit less than halfway. Then we dropped back down to the 35 EMA, tried again here on Tuesday, got pushed back down again. Wednesday, Jerome Powell spoke right here. We broke underneath that 35 EMA, but came back up towards the end of the trading day. And Thursday, the last day of the trading week, we chopped around that 35 EMA. And this is actually a much bigger move than it looks like, up 0.82%. And we did get above this 35 EMA, but stayed underneath this downward facing momentum. So 30-minute 200 moving average, I have this labeled wrong, 30-minute 200. So that downward momentum here of that 30-minute 200 moving average is very likely going to affect us into this week. Last week, from open to close, we had a completely sideways week. Lots of really big moves intraday, but from open to close on the week, we were completely flat. So IWM up 0.82% on Thursday. RVX closed down 5.04%. And Thursday we did stay completely within the implied move. And lastly, we had DIA. So here we have the entire week last week, and you can really clearly see that downward facing momentum holding us down for the entire week. And then this 35 EMA coming up and getting rejected and pulled back down. So Monday, we opened with a gap up to the downward facing 30-minute 200 moving average. Tuesday, we saw that as resistance. Wednesday, we gapped down and saw that as resistance when we popped back up. Jerome Powell spoke right here, dropped us lower. Thursday, we gapped down. We took it all the way down to the bottom of the implied move on Thursday, and look at where we saw that red signal line. Pretty early on, we came up to that 30-minute 200 moving average, and if you were looking down below, reaching overbought, we got that red signal line right here, and from there we had a massive move down. So technically a very beautiful week. And DIA on Thursday closed down 1.36%. Dow had the biggest down move of the week, and the Dow does tend to be a leading indicator of economic health. And this week so far in futures, it looks like we are continuing that move down. So Thursday, we did close within the implied move here, both on the day and on the week. So amazing week. I hope you guys made a ton of money. And coming up next, we have today's trading ranges. The next video is for members first. So if you're a member, you'll get notified as soon as that's ready. If you're not a member, you'll be able to check out that video at 4 p.m. today. So if you're ready to become a member, click that join button and let's get set up for the day. And if not, I will see you guys later. Have fun today, trade safe, make sure you take profits when you're up, and I will see you guys in a little bit.